Hey, welcome back to the second half of my Peachtober mini-series. If you missed the first episode, make sure you go back and watch it, just so you can see the full picture. Where we left off was shortly after the slug illustration. I managed to finish it, but only just on the technicality and only after a long night's work. I threw around a couple of other ideas, but nothing was really sticking and I was running out of time. So where I'd left it off was I had set my course on Leaf for the next prompt. And I hoped that I could push past my burnout. So let's see. It was one I'd been mulling on for a bit because I had a sneaky little idea for it. I'd imagined that most people would do leaf like a leaf on a tree, but so many plants have leaves, one of which is a tea plant. So I thought a really cool idea that would also tie in well with the season would be a tea leaf reading in a specialty tea shop. I was looking at a lot of apothecary shops where they used to sell herbal medicine, since there was a bit of a crossover there. I've always been intrigued by apothecaries since visiting my nana in Haworth when I was a kid. Haworth is practically a fairy tale village with its cobbled streets and old-timey shops, the main one being an apothecary at the top of the hill. So I imagined a more fantastical version of that. I wanted there to be a fantasy element to really push the Halloweeniness of it all, so I made the shopkeeper a witch. I went for a whimsy goth look because looking at all the gothic architecture of apothecaries got me to thinking about modern goth interpretations. So I was looking at a mix of old-fashioned references alongside more modern ones. Another reason I wanted to weave some fantasy in there is because I've slowly been getting into the genre lately. I was never really a fan of it in the past because I've always preferred stories with a bit more of a human heart, but I've been finding more and more examples lately of fantasy where it isn't just some sprawling war with goblins or whatever. Frieren, for instance, is a stunning example of fantasy done right. It's an anime surrounding an elf who lives forever and uses most of her time on Earth wandering the countryside, collecting cute but random spells. She ends up begrudgingly getting apprentices too, and a lot of it is just an exploration of what it means to be connected to others and to fully enjoy life. There's a lot of magic involved too, so that started the whole bug. And then I've been watching more cozy fantasy anime like Delicious in Dungeon to try and fill the Frieren-shaped hole in my life. All that to say, I had my vision, it had been swirling around like tea leaves in a teacup, you could say, and so I took to my sketchbooks to start drawing it out. So for the thumbnail, I initially wanted to have just one of these archways, but I changed it to two since I figured it would only get covered up by the witch anyway. Besides, I didn't want to get too predictable with my layouts. Unexpectedly, the gap between the arches created a triangle type shape that felt a bit witchy to me because of the maiden, mother and crone archetype. I added apothecary drawers as the till area. I was tempted to add more of them, but I kept it simple. You have to cut corners somewhere. I placed a Tiffany lamp I'd designed and a wooden clock on top to add some interest, and surrounded it all with these theatrical velvet curtains. I decided I wanted the shop to be half apothecary, half fortune-telling stall, so this helped achieve that. I then flipped back a page to this really rough sketching area. You'll see all sorts here. But for now, let's focus on this, a fashion design for the witch. I wanted a colourful and homely look to her outfit to signal that she's a good witch, you know? And I added plenty of celestial elements to nod to her specialty in fortune-telling. The patchwork quilt hat in particular was a cute touch I was looking forward to adding. I then got to the line art at last. This took forever. I at least tried to be kind to myself with the bottom two shelves, making simple, repeated shapes, but the whole point of this image really was to be super eclectic, so I couldn't be so formulaic with the rest. It was supposed to be a sort of cabinet of curiosities, as if the shopkeeper had been on many travels bringing back unique teapots everywhere she went. I had fun drawing them for the first time, to be fair. There's a lot of variety to teapots, more than you'd think. All the different filigrees, engravings and spout styles. It was never ending. I added in a fair share of more mysterious objects too, like a crystal ball, to hint at the fact that she's a real witch. I had quite some difficulty drawing the tea leaf reading itself, as it's impossible to find references for. It feels like the images of tasseomancy are as mysterious as the art itself. There's never any of people showing the teacup to the camera, so I had to work that out myself. Her facial expression is supposed to be a little unreadable. She's smirking all-knowingly, but is she smirking because she knows something good or something bad? Well, if she was reading my fortune, she'd be smirking in a bad way, I'm sure of it. Because let me tell you, drawing all this for the second time in the tracing stage was no fun at all. I think I lost the will around here. I was getting more and more behind with each prompt, and now I had the tedious tracing stage blocking my way. To make matters worse, after all that time, it didn't even come out clearly. We ended up with a ghostly apparition of a tea shop in the other book. I think that's why the end result was so blobby. I'm really not happy with the finish of this one, to be honest. I wanted more details on the teapots, like whimsical motifs and shiny textures, but I couldn't see where I was supposed to be working. And on top of that, I was getting impatient with the watercolour, so it bled into itself. This was my breaking point. I ended up posting this 6 days late. It felt like I'd really dropped the ball on Peachtober. I think what stung the most was that it wasn't even in my usual style or quality. It had felt like a waste of time. If we're focusing on the positives though, I really liked the starry sky I added as a last-minute decision. I liked the idea of letting the curtains be the only barrier between this world and the fateful universe out there. I wanted to leave it up to the viewer if the stars were really there or if it's just a metaphor for how the universe is watching over. And I like the texture of the curtains. Normally I'd blend coloured pencils to high heaven, but me running out of time here actually worked out since it gave them a matte texture. So, we've reached breaking point. What now? Well, weirdly, after my lowest point, after my highest point of stress, I reached this moment of calm. It was like, I failed already, so I might as well just enjoy the rest of the project for what it is. I figured, sure, my vision for the project is compromised, but it doesn't mean that I can't get anything out of it. So I took another look at the list. Some prompts I'd already missed, like rope, which is one where I was thinking of doing a training ground for pirates where they're swinging from rope to rope. It was slightly inspired by my misadventures over the summer on rope swings.
Stop walking, stop walking. Make it grab the rope.
Critter, I was thinking of, get this, a Mario Kart style race with vehicles made of insects. Yep, I thought that was achievable apparently. But if you're confused, it's because so was I. I thought for some reason that critter meant insect, when in fact it just means small creatures. Moving on, seagull. Seagull, I was thinking of a tailor's in a pirate ship, here we go again, and I was thinking specifically of seagulls tying a ribbon around a rather elegant looking pirate in her ball gown. Think Elizabeth Swann, but if she had Snow White-esque bird friends. And lastly, bark was another I missed. I thought first of bark of a tree, and then I thought of chocolate bark, and then I thought, why not a massive chocolate woodland where iced biscuit creatures like squirrels live? Then we get to marble, brush and aquarium, which, to be honest, I didn't have very distinct ideas for. And so it was from 16 onwards that really got my attention once more. Hatch was exciting because it could really be anything. The weirder, the better. I was torn between the hatch of a treehouse or an attic. Treehouse I'd missed out on doing for Acorn. I considered illustrating my life goal of having a treehouse that transports you to the 80s when you step inside. Picture a chunky TV complete with VHS and Atari tapes and plenty of colourful board games strewn around. I loved that idea, but I thought it'd have to be toned down for anyone other than me to enjoy it. I settled on an attic hatch that leads to a secret arcade. I wanted it to be this kid discovering it for the first time. Perhaps it's their parents' prized possessions kept safe in the attic. Seems kinda mean to hide the coolest arcade machines from your kid, but when you think about how much those things cost, I guess it's understandable. I took this one large scale. It was quite the trial at first, getting the perspective right. There doesn't seem to be a lot of photos out there of arcade machines in the attic. Funny that. But a resource I found really helpful during this is a website called Sketchfab that has a library of 3D models you can manipulate to see from different angles. It acts as kind of a portfolio for game devs, which is cool, but I found it really useful as an illustrator to get trickier angles of objects. So I used a 3D model of an arcade machine to get this just right. Spurred on, I then created a thumbnail for Whistle. My idea for this came from a train whistle. Essentially, I just wanted to draw a train, but not just any train, a rainbow-coloured train to outer space. Yeah, baby! Every time I sit down to draw something just for fun, I keep coming back to this idea of a train spiralling into the distance. I almost did a different theme for every carriage, because of course I did, but I thought a more impactful image would simply be a different colour for every one. And I kind of just thought, why don't we do that in real life anyway? You know when you have an idea and you're like, that's whimsical, it's not that difficult to do, why doesn't anyone do it? Why doesn't anyone have a sense of fun? Well, to make up for the lack of fun in the real world, I channeled it through this prompt instead. It took quite the effort though. There's no track, so getting a reference was out of the question. But then I remembered. There's a famous train with no tracks, the Polar Express. So I used that for a reference and I managed to complete this. Let's see it full scale with more detail. My plan was to do quite a graphic night sky to contrast with the rainbow train. I guess I was in the video game mindset, and the rainbow train concept kind of reminded me of the track Rainbow Road on Mario Kart. So I'd probably do some pixely geometric stars for this. It had taken a lot of time to get here, but seeing Whistle come together was really satisfying. I reached a predicament here. I was loving drawing these thumbnails and this line art, and they'd finally managed to get my spark back after all the burnout and self-doubt that I've gained from creating Leaf. But on the other hand, I, like the train, was well and truly coming off my tracks. I hadn't posted for days and I was nowhere near finishing an illustration. I thought about it and I decided to be true to my word. I was going to just enjoy the process. I decided that if I was enjoying creating thumbnails, then at least I was enjoying doing something. I must be doing something right. And so I carried on. I came then to melon. This was a bit of a stumper. I chose it because it was a fruit, and as previously established, I love those. But I didn't want it to be too similar to strawberry, and I couldn't pick an environment that made much sense. So I went off-piste. I decided to play around with the idea of melon balling. It became quite the food trend in the 70s. You grab a melon baller, and you scoop out colourful balls of fruit. This gave me the idea of doing a ball pit with melons. I thought it'd be real cute and kitschy to do it in a crystal dessert glass and play around with scale. Having kids cannonball into the honeydew, watermelon and cantaloupe. I took it large scale too. I then started on truck. For this I had a nifty idea. My mind went straight to Coraline and this scene where her other mother and father are putting on a dinner for her. And everything about it is decadent. Roast chicken, stewed pears, iced cake. But the thing that enchanted me the most was a chandelier of juices that descends from the ceiling. I had this idea of an ice cream truck with a machine that ascends from its roof to divvy out all the toppings. So the sprinkles get shot out of cannons and the chocolate sauce gets fired out of hoses. But ultimately I struggled putting idea to paper. Maybe it's my lack of engineering degree, I don't know, but I just couldn't get my head around a cool way of making it. I decided against turning this into line art. Before we move on, we must do the honourable mentions of prompts that I've missed. When the list first dropped, I was super excited about Toad. It was a classic case of the perfect match of unofficial and official prompt. So when I saw Toad, I immediately thought bathhouse. What a combo. I was imagining these cedar baths filled with mud, with toads lazing about amongst the steam. But I wondered, is it a bit derivative? I don't know why, but it just felt like something that I'd seen before. But maybe that's just me watching too much Studio Ghibli. Then I saw the prompts snowflake, web and paper. I didn't really have any solid idea that I was super jazzed about for those, but maybe an ice palace, an abandoned fairground covered in spider webs, and a post office, but maybe not. And so we came to the pinnacle, the twin prompts, spots and stripes. This was my line in the sand. Well, my new and improved line in the sand. Somewhere between leaf and truck, I decided that the only way that I could actually fail at this project was if I didn't do the twin prompt. Now, the twin prompt is a pair of prompts every year, side by side. They're often opposites, but mostly they just complement each other. Now, you can do them as one illustration together or just two that really bounce off each other. And so the whole time that I was messing around with all those thumbnails that never really went anywhere, in the back of my mind was spots and stripes, remember. And so I made sure to leave enough time for those.
So, this actually began in the rough pages, which is how you know it was on my mind from the beginning. Let's work backwards a little from this. When I saw spots and stripes, my immediate thought was Ladybird and Bumblebee, but I didn't want to just draw bugs, especially since there'd already been Slug. I wanted to use their patterns, and I saw a great opportunity for some sort of fashion design. Then, as I was thinking about how the partner prompts are supposed to be opposites, I thought about some sort of rivalry. How about I design spotty and stripy scout uniforms and have opposing summer camps? I wanted to use the bugs as mascots, since kids' teams are often named after animals. Even Scouts itself is named after cubs, beavers and squirrels. So this is a fun twist. I plan to have both teams compete to set up their camp the fastest. I've never been in Scouts myself, but I imagine it's all about that, right? Learning survival skills like lighting fires, setting up tents, gathering food. Well, maybe not the last one, come to think of it. Imagine you show up to camp, freshly 12, and you set off with nothing but a pointy stick. I hope that's not how it goes. Anyway, for this design I did a dulled down version of a ladybird, and I kept it monochromatic with 2 tones of burgundy. For Bumblebee I did the same but with mustard stripes. I did this 1 to be a bit chic, and 2 to save brighter pops of yellow and red for elsewhere in the image. I started with a super simple thumbnail. I wanted the flag to be a big thing. I'd seen a lot of embroidered banners when researching American summer camps. I think a lot of the inspiration I pulled was from the 50s to the 70s, which had this real adventurous spirit. I'm glad I got the key ideas down right away, but I did stray quite far when I circled back round. I didn't want this central layout anymore since it was getting overdone. I also knew that the characters were going to be the main focus for this, so when I took my planning over here, that's where I started. I was pretty happy with the mix of poses and gave the slight impression of perspective, even if it is way out of whack. I ran out of space to really explore the background here, so figured why not separate them out and compare. I split both canvases in half, with the bottom half mostly dedicated to characters and the top half to scenery. I tried to be as varied as I could with the environments. We have a hilly, foresty scene on the left and a mountainous lake scene on the right. Pretty classic settings for summer camp. It did occur to me whilst drawing these that I could go one of 2 ways. On the one hand, I could go for a wholesome vibe, but on the other, I could turn this into a full-on summer slasher. It is the month of Halloween after all. I went for the kid-friendly vibe, being that I'm trying to become a children's illustrator and all. I then took the side-by-side to a larger scale for the line art. Initially, I wanted more differences between the campsites so we could pick a favourite team to root for. Like if their tents were a bit neater or their campfire was a bit bigger, we'd say, I'm Camp Bumblebee. It's a bit hard to pick sides when they're the exact same, isn't it? But we had to crack on and get them done. Another time saver was not fully drawing the details on the trees. I'd only end up blobbily painting over them anyway, so might as well save on all the heartache of tracing. Speaking of which, this was my worst experience of it, because after spending hours tracing all these individual leaves, I went to transfer them and started scribbling directly over where I'd just been drawing. I think I just stood up in a silent rage and walked away. I may have taken a break from drawing that night. Looking back, I realise I've got kind of a triangle composition going on. There's certain compositions that crop up time and time again in classic art, like the rule of thirds, Fibonacci. Another is the triangle, and I think the way I've placed the tents leans into that a bit. My characters in the thumbnail were a better example of this, to be honest. I'm starting to think that part of my style is a sense of harmony in the way that I lay out the elements. And here we have it, the last two illustrations of Peachtober. I love the overall vibe, the backgrounds, the styling. I'm not even too mad about the overly similar campsite layouts in the end, since the colour schemes and poses really set them apart. But let's be honest, I messed up the people big time. A lot had to be fixed in post. I also entirely redid the flags digitally since, as you can see, I got over cocky, thinking I could freehand the lettering. I don't know where I got the nerve, since I never do typography. But hey, can't blame a girl for trying. I think I was in a bit of a rush, to be fair, since I was actually completing this on Halloween, which happens to be the last day of the challenge too. I finished it by the skin of my teeth and stayed true to my promise to myself. Halloween was hectic though. Not only was I behind on this project, but I was behind in my life generally. Of course I had to get my makeup on, but I also had to make my costume. Yep, you heard that right, make my costume. And carve a pumpkin, and get ready for trick-or-treaters. So, some of the finishing touches were a little sloppy. Other than that, I'm pretty content with these. I think it was a nice way to round out the project. Before loving and leaving you all, I'll just quickly summarise some of the prompts I couldn't quite get to. Bear was next, and kind of the last one that I was truly bummed about not doing. It had been my first lightbulb moment when brainstorming, and was pretty seasonal, so it's not like I can just randomly do it now. I decided I didn't want to just do the normal, animal bear. I wanted to do teddy bear. And then I thought about how you only really get one type of bear that's turned into a teddy, and that's a brown one. Well, what about all the others? Where's the justice for polar bears, panda bears and koala bears? Surely they should be turned into teddies too. So I knew it was going to be a range of different teddy bears. And then I took to my list of environments for the missing piece. Hospital stood out to me, and I wondered if I could illustrate a teddy bear's hospital. The seasonal part was that I'd make it creepy in there, almost zombie or voodoo doll vibes, with really rudimentary stitching keeping the toys together. They'd come in with button eyes hanging out or ears dangling off, and then the nurses would patch them up. I was envisioning a very old-fashioned hospital, maybe wartime era with wheeled-out beds. I planned a pastel colour scheme to really pop against black stitching and to have that pastel goth aesthetic. The next one was Axe. This is one that piqued my interest when the prompt list first dropped, but over time my interest in it waned. It's funny how sometimes ideas leave as quickly as they arrive. This was very much a combo of the two lists. Axe from the official one and pub or tavern from the unofficial one. I was going to answer the question, where does the woodsman go after the story of Little Red Riding Hood ends? Why, he goes down to Boozer to celebrate, of course. I was going to design a log cabin pub that an ex-woodsman owns and runs for all the local lumberjacks. It's exclusively for lumberjack clientele, and due to that fact, accommodations would have to be made, naturally, for their axes. There'd be big tree stumps next to every table for them to be left in. I was looking forward to injecting some humour, having every customer wear a different plaid shirt, and I'd subvert the lumberjack stereotype in a number of ways. Ultimately though, I got less excited about it when I thought of the final piece and how beige it would end up with all the wood. Colour really is a motivator for me, it seems. Button, initially I was a bit stumped on, which is a shame because I love Coraline and I was jumping at the chance to do a button themed illustration. but maybe having such a strong association was a drawback, since it was hard to think of anything else. At last the idea of a hattery occurred to me. At first I thought of a tailor's, but I wanted something different from Seagull, so how about a hat shop? I was thinking of references like the Mad Hatter and the hat shop in Howl's Moving Castle. I mostly had in my head the image of a customer trying on a ridiculously big hat covered entirely by buttons. Then 29, sour. Similar to button, the word itself excited me more than any ideas I could come up with. I never had a solid concept, but was thrown around ideas of sour sweets since they were a childhood favourite of mine. That led me onto the sour sugar crystals that they're coated with. I was thinking some sort of spacey, crystally vibe, maybe like in being Puppycat, probably my all-time favourite show, at least the web version. They have a lot of planet designs that feel like they're probably made of sour sweets. I think even in the first episode there's a farmer who looks after gummy animals, so I'd go for a similar vibe. 30 was the next one I was truly considering. And again, it had a seasonal element, which makes me disappointed I didn't do it within the month. For Whisker, I was thinking cat, but more specifically, Halloween cat. I had this quirky little idea of drawing a cat cafe with a twist, where all the waiters are cats and all their customers are witches. Like their familiars serving their masters, not only with loyalty, but with lattes too. I had a really vivid aesthetic in mind that centred from literally just one image I'd seen of some Halloween patchwork vests. It felt so childlike and fun, and it reminded me of childhood Halloween parties. Really colourful and in your face. The cafe would kind of feel like a throwback to the 2000s, with paper skeletons hung up on the walls, goofy pumpkins around every corner, and plenty of black, orange and purple to be seen. The last prompt was ghost. I had an interesting idea, but maybe it wasn't quite my style. I was thinking of illustrating a ballroom where half the dance partners were alive and half of them were ghosts. Perhaps they could be their lost loved ones and it would be tragically romantic. Think the scene in Casper where he has one dance with the cat before returning to his ghost form, but much more sombre. I was thinking a moody colour scheme of mostly greys and blues.
So that's the whole list and that's the whole video. I really hope you've enjoyed journeying with me through a very chaotic Peachtober. There may not have been a lot to show for it, but there certainly was a lot to waffle about it. Reflecting on the challenge, yes, I objectively failed at completing 31 drawings during the course of October. But I feel personally that I succeeded in a lot of my own challenges that I set for myself. And it just goes to show that often rules are just the starting point, and it's in the breaking of them that often the magic of creation lies. Speaking of which, I really enjoyed the combination of the word prompts and my own environment prompts. It led to a lot of unexpected outcomes, and it's now a technique that I have in my back pocket for whenever I get stuck. I've come out of this project feeling a lot more confident in my style. I went in worried that it wasn't consistent enough and it wasn't unique enough. But now I'm coming out and I'm noticing quite a lot of trends in my work, or at least in my way of approaching work. Quite a lot of symmetry, quite a lot of kitschiness in the theming of it, plenty of texture and a good dose of colour too. I'm glad I let my ideas just take me wherever they needed to. I'm sure I could have been more militant or cut more corners to just get it all done, but I think what has naturally happened has a lot more value to me. And with that, here's to Peachtober 2026. Bring it on. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in more creative misadventures with me, why not hit the subscribe button? And whilst you're at it, you might as well check out my art over on Nosredler Designs on Instagram or at nosredler.com for my portfolio. Links in bio. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.